Hello, Aldo Matze here. Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My guest on this episode is Montreal percussionist Robert Leroux, who has recorded and performed with some of Canada's top artists on all levels in many different areas. Artists such as Montreal Symphony, André Gagnon, Concept Neuf, and many, many others in the various fields, classical, pop, etc. He then went on to teach percussion at the University of Montreal, then became the dean of the faculty of Université de Montréal, then expanded his own journey to go into the tech world while keeping in touch still with the music world, the arts and culture. I had the pleasure of working with Robert way back in touring and recording with Miguel Percussion Ensemble and the 9-piece percussion group Concept Neuf. Here is Robert Leroux. Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey, Robert. Thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure, and I've known you for many years, and finally I get to have you on this podcast.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Aldo.
Yeah, no, it's for me, it's big, bigger than you think. Anyway, but before we get into like shaping your journey and talking about all those decisions we make in our lives that kind of take us to that place where we finally end up, not finally end up, but continue ending up in. Can you take us back, way back in the beginning? What started it for you? Because you have been part of the Quebec and Canadian scene, for sure, the percussion scene. And people maybe outside our circles may not know the volume of work you've done, but where did this start? Where was that fire actually started for you?
Actually, when I was young, I took piano lessons for a few years, and that was a long time ago. And as a teenager, I started playing drums because I liked the pop music, and I like to do that. I thought there was a nice break from classical music, classical piano. And the more I went, the more I enjoyed playing the drums. But actually, when I came to university, it was just a year before they invented the CEGEP here in Quebec, which is a 2-year college between high school and university. And so I wanted to study piano. I wanted to be a pianist. And they listened to me and said, yeah, but you're not quite the level to be in performance piano. But we saw in your file, in your dossier, that you played drums, and we're opening a percussion class. We need the students. I said, okay. So why not? So, and it was Guy Lachapelle, who was assistant timpanist and first percussion at Montreal Symphony teaching.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed it. I started practicing all day long. And it's funny because at the time, the percussion studio where I practiced was the furthest in the School of Music because we were sharing the same floor as nursing school. And my dean of music, he wanted more studios from the university, and the university wouldn't give him. So every morning he would come and says, practice the door open. Practice with the door open. So I would open the door, then the dean of nursing would come and close my door. My dean would come, open my door.
Beautiful.
Until a point where at the cafeteria one noon, the staff from nursing came to me. One of the staff from nursing came to me and said, are you going to practice this afternoon? I says, yes. Good, thank you. I said, why? Because when you practice, it's unbearable. And the dean tells us to leave at 3:00, and I have shopping to do today. So I was useful in a kind of way. And after a year with Guy, he said, I think we were 2 students at the time. He says, you should go to McGill. He says, my friend Pierre Beluze, he's got a class, a whole bunch. He does ensemble and stuff like that. So I moved to McGill, and actually for a year, I had the lessons from both Guy Lachapelle and Pierre Beluze. So it was real fun. And with Pierre, it was a real discovery.
Yeah. Let me just interject because I know what you're going to say, but I have to say this. So like Guy Lachapelle with Louis Charbonneau and Pierre Belus, they were like the three pillars of this whole percussion studio, percussion concepts, because here you had the marriage of Delécluze from France, that study, and also Saul Goodman from New York. And they've studied with Saul Goodman, Louis did. And so you have the best of both worlds right here. And those two guys, Louis Charbonneau, not Louis Charbonneau, but Guy Lachapelle and Pierre Belus, were monsters. Monsters in the sense that were insanely talented, inspiring, and they did so much. I mean, they were like, the question is, did you study with Pierre? Yes, he made me. he's the reason why we're here.
Definitely. I remember the second week I had lesson with him. He had given me a Wilcoxon snare drum study. I think it was rolling in rhythm or something like that. And he said, wait a minute. And he went away for about 5 minutes. I didn't know what he was doing, but he came back and he said, we're going to play it together and you'll learn how to play it. And we played it about 4 times slower. And he said, when you play it fast, I want still to hear the silence between each note. So you have to play even, you have to have the right volume, and you have to write the right texture of sound, So it was a great school, great school. And that was in 1968 or 69. I don't remember exactly. But, and then second year with Pierre, I did my first professional concert with the Société de musique contemporaine du Québec, which was the sole organization at that time presenting contemporary music concerts with a lot of percussion. The first concert I saw there, it was Berriot, and I heard they played, Pierre and Guy played the Circles by Berriot for 2 percussion, harp and singer. And I was so I was so flabbergasted by this. It was like one sorceress and 2 sorcerers,
Right.
playing. And I said, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. So that's how and then I had the luckiest opportunity to play a first concert with SMCQ, Société Musique Contemporaine. I remember we were playing Mallarmé by Pierre Boulez's work, and boy, it's a long time ago, but it seems as yesterday. I think it was December 69 or December 1970 or something like that. And then after that, it started going. I did as an extra the Montreal Symphony, but there was another orchestra at that time. It was called the CBC Orchestra. It was the radio television orchestra, and we had concerts every Friday. So
Wow.
I had a good time doing pit orchestra, going to the symphony every now and then, and also playing jingles, because the studio work was booming at that time. In the early 70s, it was really booming. So I would record 1 or 2 jingles every week on top of that. And it was fun because I was doing that as a overdub right after rhythm section. So I could go in at 8:30, record the jingle, and then go to rehearsal, symphony rehearsal at 10, so everything fitted together. But we were working hard, definitely working very hard at that time. So that's how it took off. Yeah.
And then at McGill, because I remember when I came into McGill, I'm going to back up just a little bit, speaking of rolling in rhythm, because I was studying, I grew up in Ottawa studying with Ian Bernard, and he had me on that one, the rolling in rhythm, and the first etude of Delécluze for the whole year. And I was a drum set player. But I really wanted to play percussion. And then during the course of the year, he said to me, Aldo, you can't stay here. You got to go to McGill and study with Pierre Belus. So I said, sure, I'll work it up. And then when I'm ready, I'll do the audition. So then it's funny because at the end of that year, I said, well, next year I told Ian, I said, next year over the summer, I'll be able to do this. And then I received a letter in the mail that I was accepted at McGill. And I was really confused because I said to Ian, Ian, I didn't dream this. I never did an audition for McGill. So he said, I know how you work because I've known you for a little bit. I know you're going to take your time until you thought you were ready. But you remember one day there was a gentleman in your class, when we did our lesson, there's a guy sitting in the corner with his sunglasses on. Well, that was Pierre Belus. He was in town with the Montreal Symphony, and that was your audition. so I quickly, oh man, that was frightening, Robert, because the guy, everybody at McGill, and the reputation was, you better be ready because this is the place. And I just ran to Montreal and started working with him. And of course, the rest is history, in the sense that you're in the right place. If you want to work, this is it. But you did a lot of work, all through that, because you came back and did some work with the ensemble. And I remember we did the McGill Percussion Ensemble, the 9 percussionists. And do you want to talk a little bit about that experience, how you came back and started working with Pierre?
Well, Pierre wanted to, first, Pierre wanted a percussion group that would do 2 kinds of things. Contemporary classical stuff for percussion on one hand, and on the other, more pop oriented. So he asked me to join both because it was the same musicians. You were part of that.
Yes.
So I accepted, because actually McGill Percussion Ensemble, there were lots of people there were a few people that hadn't studied to McGill at all. It was more like a group that Pierre set up with former students of McGill, but others. So, it was a great experience. It was a great experience because we did a lot of shows. You remember, we did a lot of shows.
Oh, yes.
And touring and all kinds of conditions. But it was fun. We were all young and ready to do a lot of stuff. We wanted to play. We wanted to be on the scene. So we were ready for anything, actually.
Yes, and we did. I mean, the percussion ensemble on tour with like 2 million pounds of gear, like crazy.
Yeah.
But I remember a thought just came to me when we were invited at the PAS in Winnipeg, and we played. Billy Cobham was there, but we played with Ed Shaughnessy, I believe, right? Was it Ed Shaughnessy? Ed Shaughnessy, yes. That concerto that John Beck wrote for Steve Gadd. So we did that with him, and we were doing like contemporary music one day, pop stuff the next day. But the learning experience with 9 percussionists, I mean, it's like the biggest and the best learning experience I certainly ever had, and it set me up for life, for sure.
Definitely.
And I mean, guys like yourself who are already, way ahead of some of us who were just in green and got less green really quickly with Pierre, because he didn't take no for an answer. He just worked us insanely. Do you remember that piece by Walter Boudreau?
Oh, yeah.
Les 7 jours, the 7 days.
Yeah.
How much time we spent on that? I think Pierre, because we used to rehearse together.
In the summer, yeah.
All the time. And I think he calculated, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 200 hours ensemble?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I think he was calculating how much work ensemble. And then, of course, we had our own work to do. And it was all like huge setups and these extremely complicated things.
Very
amazing.
Hard piece. Yeah, very hard piece with a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
It was called The 7 Days.
Yeah.
And when the composer, Walter Boudreau, came to listen to us, we simulated a strike on the street with posters saying no to the 7-day week. But it was a fun experience. fun.
That was amazing.
It's fun. You know how it is. You never have enough time to rehearse. You know, when you do especially contemporary music with a big ensemble, you have, you know, maybe 6 rehearsals and that's it. And it's always fun to know that you have a lot of time ahead. I was in such experiences a few times. I remember when the first time I played the piece by Stockhausen for piano, tape, and percussion. I don't remember the name. With Louis-Philippe Pelletier. We rehearsed every day, like a 9 to 5 job for a whole month, you know.
Wow.
Every day we would come in the studio, start working together, and, you know, inch by inch, minute by minute, we got this 24-minute piece together, and then we played it on tour. It was a great experience. And the other time was when we played Le Marteau sans Maître by Pierre Boulez, which is another hard piece. And we spent almost a whole year, you know, started there in October when the concert was in April, you know. So that's fun because you have time to go deep, you know, you have time to master the technical aspects and then put music in that, so that it looks easy when you play it, you know, on stage. So yeah, I always enjoyed those kinds of experiences because I had you know, my career was mostly at that time jumping from one rehearsal to one recording to one concert, you know, every day, you know, 7 days a week almost. So it was fun to take some time to go deep in the pieces. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
And we had in that time we had an environment where you had people like La Chapelle, Beluse, certainly. I mean, my experience was mainly with Beluse, of learning how to make music out of any instrument. Everything was an instrument, a cymbal, and everything, the nuance, the texture. We went crazy going really deep, and wow, what an experience that is to be able to do that. Because certainly later you don't have that kind of time. That luxury, but
sometimes, you know, when I played at the Montreal Symphony, because I was Louis Charbonneau's assistant timpanist for 2 years, and first percussion, and just playing besides Louis, you learn so much. You learn so much because Louis had a dynamic type of playing. You know, he was a true student of Saul Goodman. So the attacks were always on the edge, and he could play very, very soft and still be heard. And so it gave me a lot on sound texture and presence in the orchestra to drive an orchestra. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. But then I quit because I wanted to do something else also.
Yeah, but before you quit, I mean, I remember when Montreal Symphony for a while was like winning all these awards and all the recordings they were doing, and I remember you had played the snare drum part for Bolero, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, I mean, playing that and that was like an award-winning recording, and the orchestra always sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, that was beautiful. Velvet.
Oh, it was such a great experience. You know, you when you play it on stage, you work very hard to play it. Of course, the beginning very, very softly, with the strings that are always late. You know, and so you have to be steady and don't move. And I was almost deceived when we were making the record for pickup's sake or whatever. Dutoit asked me to play a little louder. So in a sense, I got rid of some of the nervousness, but I was a bit deceived, you know, having played it on tour very, very softly and then going to record, you know, to put it on tape. And he asked me to play a little louder, and I was almost deceived, you know. It was kind of a deception, but it felt great. You know that this recording, they spliced in some of the solos, you know.
Okay.
So we did the whole Bolero. Then the maestro wanted to re-record just once one solo or the other one. I don't remember. It was trombone or whatever. And we recorded just those sections. And when they put it together, the same beat was there. We had no click track, nothing. We were all on the same beat. I said, that's a very dangerous move, but
Yeah.
it did
Wow.
happen. Yeah.
Oh,
That
wow.
was fun.
Thanks for sharing
fun.
That's amazing, actually, that they were. The band at the time was amazing, and the percussionists have always been in that orchestra. Have always
And
been.
I remember that recording the night before. I was playing Bartok piano and percussion sonata in Ottawa. So I came in home quite late that night, and next morning we were recording Bolero. But we had done it on tour, so it felt kind of easy, and we had plenty of time. It was good experience, good times.
Yeah. But you also did a lot of pop recording. I remember specifically Andre Gagnon. There's a huge hit he had, and you did at the beginning the conga introduction to this, which was really a lot of fun. And I still pointed out to people, as I mentioned to you the other day, that one of my students was going crazy about this intro for another song. I said, well, this is nice, but listen to this. Somebody you may or may not know, Andre Gagnon here. It was a huge international hit. Listen to the introduction, the conga part. He says, oh my God, who is that? I got to see it. So I said, his name is Robert Leroux.
And he's not playing anymore.
But you did a lot. And then all our experience with Concept Neuf, like the 9 percussionists doing the path, all of those things. For me, it was an incredible experience working, being in that environment and working and learning every day. And it's really funny. I just remember that. I remember one day we were rehearsing at Guy Lachapelle's studio because he had a rental business and he had a big studio, and we would rehearse there. And it got to the point that some of the artists who were touring in Quebec, if they wanted a percussionist, they would call Guy's studio to find out if Concept Neuf was on tour, because otherwise they wouldn't have a percussionist. Somebody was on tour with somebody. Yeah. So that was funny.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Those are great times. Also, after that, you went on to, were you teaching at the University of Montreal?
Yeah.
And then then you, how did that expand in your your journey?
It's funny. It's because of jazz, actually. When I was teaching, after a few years, you build your class and you start looking around in the school, how are things going? And I found out there was no jazz program at U of M at that time. We're talking beginning of the 80s, So I said, I went to the dean or the vice dean. I said, this is unreal. This is where the work is for many students. We should have a program. And says, well, start working on it and give us bring a proposition. So I started working with a friend and with a drummer who was teaching in Drummondville, Richard Provençal, which, and we built a program that was accepted, that was implemented. And at that time, program went well. So the dean said, listen, I've been watching you, leading that program and implementing it. And he says, I need a vice dean. Would you like to join me? I said, okay, why not? And then I started finding out that, at that time, I'd been playing for 15 years, a little more, and I found it very interesting to be able to change things, bring in new programs, new opportunities for students. And so after, putting the hand and the arm, the whole body went through. And when his term was over, I was elected dean. So I was very young, and the university management was a bit cautious for my career. but I knew the figures. I knew how to unmount everything and remount it. So it was a huge experience for me to be able to apply in music management the drive that I had playing percussionist, because after all, before being a percussionist or a violinist, we're musicians. And to me, it was like pushing the music and pushing the presence of music and students in the world. Actually, the jazz program went so well that by the time I was dean, I would watch TV to find if there were any of our graduates on TV. And at one point, I bet with my wife, I said, I'm going to give you $10 for every day that you don't find a graduate on TV, of our program on TV. And she never made a penny. And I didn't have any influence on who hired who, So it was
Beautiful.
it was a success, and we did other stuff, So to the point that after 9 years, I was asked to go lead the continuing ed school at the same university. And that was another huge experience, huge experience. This is where you find the human part of the teaching. Continuing ed in Quebec, for instance, was a lot at that time. The place for adults, mainly women, who studied while they were young. They stopped their professional beginnings because they had children, and then they want to go back, and they could go to a bachelor degree. But after studying part-time for 8 years, 9 years, and at the graduation, they would come up on stage with their kid,
Nice.
and I would say they were not there when you started. And they had the whole family clan, and screaming, and it was a wonderful achievement experience for me. But after 4 years at the continuing ed, my vision of continuing ed was completely different from the principal's vision. So who wins? I left continuing ed, and I started the business after buying intellectual property for a project that we had at university, and I set up a business, and I was there for 5 years. And then I was on not on sabbatical, but on leave, without pay from the university. What I had forgotten is maximum 5 years. If you don't come back after 5 years, you lose that job. So the dean of music at the time gave me a call and says, "Tell me if you're coming back, because if you're not, you're losing the job." So I came back. So that's how I came back to school, and that's a year after we started I co-founded another percussion group called Six Drum, with friends from McGill and from U of M, and we had a lot of fun with that also.
Nice.
But then I quit after a while because I was getting older, and we would do a children's show, with kind of choreography and stuff. So you had to run here, run there, sit down, go up. And I was always the last one, I was the slowest one. So I said, that's my cue. I'm leaving all this. So as a joke, I used to say, I made a proposition to the group, and they did not accept. I wanted to do only concerts, no rehearsal, no carrying of stuff, no nothing. And they refused. So I left.
So then you took another sabbatical.
It was time to leave that. So I kept teaching for a while, and then I decided to do other stuff. It's funny because life goes in zigzags, all the time, and you change, your objectives change. As a musician, I had the opportunity to at one point to join what's his name? We talked about him the other day, the singer.
Oh, Graham Lear.
Sorry?
Graham Lear?
No, the singer with
Gino Vanelli. Oh, yes.
Gino Vanelli.
Yes.
And I I had heard of Gino Vanelli, but one day he called me and he wanted to join him in LA, and I was skeptical. And also, mainly, I had been on tour for a year and a half away from Montreal, and I felt that if I left again, there was no chance for me coming back. Coming back in the music business. So I gave him other names, and so I could have moved, but at that time, years later, when I was dean, I felt that I had gone around the scene, I ate the lunch,
Right.
on all kinds of stuff, pop music, film music, recordings, jingles, and so plus anything that was happening in town. So, and the fact that our students were more numerous coming and better playing, it didn't feel like how should I say, a defeat that I left the music scene at that time. And even when I came back, I did absolutely no gig. The only things I did was with the percussion group. So there were new people at the symphony. They called me once to do a concert. I went back. I did one, and I said, no, let the younger guys play, and I've got other things to do. And when I left all that, when I had started a business, when you start a business, you have some financing, but you have to do a lot of stuff by yourself. So I started taking care of the website, and then we did the e-learning. So I started getting into e-learning and building stuff on web, and finally musicians in Montreal would phone me up and says, I want a website. Can you make this for me? Sure. Because they knew I understood what musicians wanted to say and to show, and also I knew what their constraints were, and
Right.
And years after, with one of my daughters, we decided to go more seriously and start a business, and we do corporate stuff, and we do music groups and organizations. So it's going very well, and that's it. We're finished.
No, it's really interesting because at the end of the day, it's all about vision, and it's all about solving problems. It's all about how do and I'm sure you're the same way. When I see something, I see the end result first, and then I worked for it. Like I had,
and there's another phenomena going in schools of music, and I gave a course for a few years at the university with métier de musicien, music business. And, I did a little study, checking the figures, and I found out that if you put together the graduate musicians that come out of schools ready to play in classical orchestras, for instance, not only orchestra instrument players, and you look at the number of openings there are in orchestras that have a contract of at least 48 weeks, real full-time jobs.
right.
And I put that together, and it came out that there was 1% chance that you get a job in an orchestra. So what do the 99% other people do? And that today it's not enough to be good. Practicing more is not always the solution. You have to bring something new. You have to have your own voice. You have to. So when I used to teach this course, I used to ask the students, "What is your mission?" And and said, you look at visual artists, they have a statement, always have a statement of what they do, want it so. How do you do that? Well, I said, 3 questions you have to answer. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And so what? And so what? What does it bring? What does the world look like if you're not there? And if, on the other hand, if what you do was everywhere, taught in schools and everything, in what kind of world would we be living? To get a sense of what you bring, because if you don't bring something original, 99% of the people, they can't make the difference between the world's best cellist and the world's 100th best cellist. They can't make the difference. So you have to bring something new, and sometimes the solution is in the thinking. It's in the networking. It's all other types of things that are besides practicing. And sometimes, you have to get out of the studio and talk to people. I used to say to students, listen, every noon at the cafeteria, there are about 60 music students sitting eating. You know that your next employer is sitting there. He is. I experienced it. I did the whole kid TV show for 2 years that paid a lot of money because the producer of that show was a former student that I played in summers with. He was a saxophone player, and he called me one day and says, "I'm now a producer at one of the big networks, and I want a children's show with a percussionist. Do you want to join me?" I said, "Sure." So I would say that to the students, talk to people, because your employers, they're all there. They're all sitting there in a few years. So be friends, be nice, be cool, and talk to people.
Yeah.
And learn how to bring something not necessarily new, but unique, that people will catch on to. And after that, I would learn them how to drive a project, driving a project is like eating an elephant. It's one bite at a time,
Right.
You have to know where to start. And so I tried to apply that, because I was a mission-driven guy. When I was dean, it was all that, vision of how a school would look like, and where do I want to bring that? What type of difference do I want the students that come here make in the world? Yeah, that was my main motivation all the time.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because, as I always say to my students, I said, I'm the example. I would be working all the time, and I did work a lot, and then Repercussion, my quartet, who came out of, two of the members of that group were also in Concept Neuf. So there's this building of, and the offshoots of all of these projects, but people who had that energy, that hunger, and that vision of doing something else. And everybody did. And, I started the COSA, founded the whole COSA music thing. And it just, if it doesn't exist, usually you have an idea, and you should explore it, and you should do it wherever it goes. Wherever you land, make the world a better place. That's the way I always see it. I remember just going back a little bit, because at one point I said I only have a bachelor's degree. I had a double degree in jazz and classical performance and percussion. But I said I'm really interested in world music, and there's only one place that had a program, and that was University of Montreal with Monique Desroches. So I registered, and I said I'm going to do my master's at U of M, because they had they're interested in that. Did you have any dealings with that? Not dealings. Did you have anything to do with that program, or was that something separate while you were there?
Well, actually, it was no. I had something to do with that, but actually, maybe before you started thinking of doing it, this world music program was mostly an ethnomusicology program.
Right.
So more theoretical. But the school was given instruments. It was given full Balinese gamelan from the government of Indonesia, with the responsibility of teaching it. And they started getting interested in Cuban music and Brazilian music and Arabic type of music. And the more and more it went from ethnomusicology to a practice of
Right.
I pushed that a lot. You try to push a lot of things, but you try to do things that are relevant in an environment, and to me, world music was very important. Just for opening the ears of people. In music schools, we very seldom have the opportunity to learn music by ear only. So people playing gamelan, there's no written music for that. It's all oral tradition,
Right.
and other types of music also. So to me, just having students do that, to me was a real, I would come to, I would sometimes open doors of students practicing, interrupting them and saying, play me national anthem in A flat. Do you have the music? you know,
Yes.
Can you play me Happy
yes.
Birthday?
Yeah.
Just play the music. So to me, that was a big, big resource, a big asset doing that. The other part was also digital music, digital studio, digital production, and so on, multimedia. That was a big thing because years after I left, I found out that a lot of the students that had been in those programs were now in big gaming studios, gaming producing studios, making music. And the music part is very important. So, and you have to learn how to write in different styles, different.
Right.
To me, it was a good thing that yeah.
And it's the whole thing about the oral music tradition. I mean, sometimes we forget that the non-oral music traditions are very limited. I mean, the classical being one, the Western European classical music. But most of the rest, I mean, once it dawns on you, you look around, and I'm sure that's what happened to you. You saw it, and you say, how come it's not everywhere? Same thing with me when I first started studying. I said, well, I have to go further. I mean, I was doing it practically, but now I wanted to know from an academic point of view, what is it, so I can explain it and make that bridge. So I really wanted to do that because the oral traditions are huge all over the planet. And
Yeah,
and that's how we learn music in the
sorry?
first place. And that's how we learned music in the first place, orally first, right?
But the sheet music has to do with a business model that's also part of Western music. The intellectual property, the publishing of the music, and music in
Right.
homes where people would gather around the piano. A lot of people learn by ear, but other people they read the music. They read the songs. They could read that. But that was a business model before we had recordings and stuff like that. Instruments and sheet music. That was how the money went through. When they started the musicians starting to be afraid that technology would replace them in studios and stuff like that. I found an article that I gave to those students, those musicians, and it was exactly the same words, but the context was film going with sound.
Right.
Because before that, every theater had an orchestra. And this guy wrote an article saying the film is going to replace the musicians, because it's killing the orchestral business in movie theaters. So change comes with a lot of turmoil.
Right. And how do you feel about where we are, in this day and age, where technology, streaming? I mean, when you hear Paul Simon selling his catalog, I mean, this is a whole different world. Where I mean, certainly that we grew up in, and it's another crossroads.
Well, definitely, it's very hard for musicians to now because before we made money with records. You had one recording, you bought it, and there was that one piece.
Right.
Today, streaming is like a big faucet that's always open. And every drop of water, it's the catalog of an artist. So it's in the 19th century, at one point, before radio, if you heard that an orchestra was playing a Brahms symphony, you knew that if you went to listen to it, it would be the only time in your life.
Right.
Now you get all versions of Brahms symphonies, by all orchestras in your phone, So it changes a lot, and the business model is changing for musicians. As a joke, I used to say in my course, you want to make money in music, buy cable, sell cable, sell internet cable, send internet package. You'll make money with music because, so now we have to stand out in a different way. We have to bring something in a different way, and we have to how should I say, propose how to bring forth a vision that's your own, and we're back to music with fans, with real people listening and enjoying it. And besides that, there are so many musicians. There are so many musicians, Aldo. Just in Quebec, just in the province of Quebec, there was a study by a Chamber of Commerce of Montreal that went out a few weeks ago. Over a period of 20 years, the music offer went up by 60%. The music demand went down by 11%. So, so there's a lot of musicians out there, good musicians,
Right.
but the people, they don't know the difference between a very good musician and an outstanding outstanding flabbergastic. They don't know the difference between the two. What they know is if they see themselves in the music.
Right.
An old poet and songwriter, Félix Leclerc, once said to a younger guy, he says, always remember, when people are going to see you on stage, it's not you that they came to see, it's themselves through you. So if you know how to speak to the people with the music, then you get something, and people really get something out of it. But there are a lot of concerts. I remember in the early 70s, Société Musique Contemporaine du Québec was the only act in Quebec where you could hear contemporary music. Now it's hard to find a day where there are not two concerts happening,
Right.
So the offer went so much. So I don't know really what to think. And now people are afraid because artificial intelligence is going to write songs. I have doubts on the real success of that, because, of course, very mechanical, recipe-based music is going to be easy to replicate. But music with original forms, original ideas, that's going to be real harder. I think there's still room, but for originality, though. Not
That's right.
a whole industry based on three chords, That's easy
Right,
to...
right. Yeah, and I think what you're also saying is that when there is so much going on, those people who have the clear ideas, or most original ideas, there's also always going to be a need for that and a place for that. So the onus is for us all to be better, to be more original, and then you stand out. It's like being Elvin Jones. I mean, there's only one. There's one Steve Gadd, one of everything, that place will always be needed, and there'll always be room for that. And that's a big responsibility to take it to that level, because now from zero to there is not the same thing as from zero to where they needed it to be in the 50s or 60s, and then it just keeps going up because right?
Music performance is very Darwinistic. I don't know if the right word to use, but because there's this much people studying, but that in the end, there's going to be a few only that are going to really make it. But there are so many other ways to stay in the music business and do something that you feel you accomplish something, and you get your dreams and the action together. Teaching music privately is something very powerful in a community. Very powerful in a community. We've seen communities change because of a local school, teaching piano, making concerts, and suddenly there's something going on that draws people together. and this can be a very powerful social thing going. You know, my English is not good to find the right words, but I'm sure you understand.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it builds these nucleuses, and I see it. I mean, I see it with people around me, and those who are good and understand it get and understand the value of that at a high level, because the demand is always there. I mean, I am getting people calling me who, whatever age they are, they want lessons. Someone who's retired, someone who just came back in the workforce and wants a different part. I mean, it's always going to be there. So I think we have to be more optimistic, and the optimism is clearly showing us. I mean, I see it, certainly see it, that the interest is there, but in a different way. So the value that you put in and the demand is there, and you create, as you said, these little communities that suddenly everybody knows each other. It's like a different kind of family that know each other. It's recitals online. I mean, my wife does part of her recitals online. Now that means she does, of course, the regular ones on violin and piano, but also all the parents of all those people who come from all over the world can listen in and actually see what's going on. I mean, you didn't have that 20 years ago. It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, it's there, and you just have to have a little bit of imagination and just think outside the box. And we all keep thinking, how can we make this better? You know, whatever we do in our own small way or in a big way. It's all the same, right? Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you. I mean, we can go on and on about all this stuff, but I really appreciate you taking the time, Robert, to join me on this and just throwing around ideas and also learning about your work and the different ways that we can shape our lives and shape our journey. And at the end of the day, we're in charge, right?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. We're the only one that can make it possible for us.
Right. That's right. Anyway, thank you so much. And as I always say,
thank you for the invite, Aldo.
Pleasure. And as I always say, to be continued.